Beneath the desert night sky, where sand and stars blend like memory and destiny, there is a name no one knows, yet her influence echoes through generations. She was the wife of Ham, son of Noah. No one knows where she came from. No one recorded her words. The Bible doesn't give her a name, but she was the mother of Cush, of Canaan, of nations that shaped the map of human history. Can an invisible woman shape the world? When the world was reborn after the Great Flood, God chose to start anew not only through men, but through women hidden in the shadows, yet carrying within them the seeds of entire nations. She had no name, but she had faith, no voice, but she bore life. And perhaps her silence was the most powerful testimony of a quiet, unquenchable grace. Her story has never been told until now. Follow the channel to uncover this forgotten journey where grace meets destiny and silent faith reshapes the future. As the first dawn broke over the Midian desert, a gentle golden light stretched across the rugged sands, as if to dry the last lingering drops of the flood. The earth was still damp, the air heavy with the scent of rebirth. In the distance, Noah's great ark rested silently, a quiet witness to both catastrophe and grace. Its water-soaked, cracked timbers stood firm. A vast door yawned open, and from it the first footsteps of a new humanity touched the dry ground. Slow, cautious, carrying a blend of hope and fear. Among those who stepped from the ark was a woman no one named. No cheers greeted her. No sign from the heavens heralded her presence. Yet it was her silence that set her apart. She was the wife of Ham. Not a single line in Genesis mentions her name. She had no royal lineage, received no prophecy, built no altar, but she had survived the great flood. She stepped onto this new earth with astonishing calm. Her sun-darkened skin bore traces of distant lands, and her eyes, deep as the waters that once swallowed the world, quietly observed the stirrings around her. Noah moved quickly. As the only righteous man spared from God's wrath, he began establishing order, assigning tasks, rebuilding life from the ruins. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, set to work under his command. Their wives kindled fires, cooked meals, and raised tents. The air buzzed with the energy of a fresh start, as if everyone clung to tasks to forget the bodies swept away, the cries that once echoed through the storm. And she, the nameless woman, remained silent. She didn't join the discussion. She claimed no plot of land. She neither complained nor boasted. Instead, she walked to the edge of the camp where the sun rose from a blazing red horizon. She knelt, touching the sand, her hand trembling slightly as she grasped a handful of new earth, as if feeling the first heartbeat of a reborn world. No one followed. No one asked where she went. But she knew. She heard what others didn't, a quiet urging, a call rising from the depths of the earth and her spirit. It wasn't a grand mission, but an invitation to step into a silent yet vital role in the unfolding story of redemption. Within her lay the seeds of nations. Not metaphorically, but literally. She was the mother of Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Names that would later be tied to kingdoms, wars, curses, and promises. But now, in the first dawn of a new humanity, she was simply a silent woman carrying hope in her womb. Ham, her husband, was rebellious, entangled in an incident that brought a curse upon Canaan's line. But not her. She wasn't condemned, nor mentioned as sinner or saint. She simply was. Yet her presence was enough to alter the fate of continents. While others built altars, she planted seeds, not as a religious ritual, but as an act of life. The seeds she pressed into the soil weren't just for food, but to prove that life endured. That even without fame, praise, or prophecy, she was a bearer of life to Subaru Outback. Night fell over the Midian desert like a thick, heavy curtain, swallowing all sound and light. Only the flickering glow of a small fire illuminated the humble tent where the survivors tried to reclaim a sense of normalcy in a world remade. The sandy wind hissed softly against the tent's edges, whispering of the past, of what was lost, and of things yet unspoken. She sat there near the fire with her two young sons sleeping soundly beside her, Cush and Mizraim. They were still small, their hands soft, their hearts as pure as the sky before a storm. But in their slumber lay the future of nations, the bloodline that would shape the map of humanity. And she, still just a shadow in the very story she helped create. No one spoke her name. No record honored her in the genealogies. No words praised her in the revelations. She had boarded the ark with her husband, survived the flood, held her young sons through 40 relentless days of rain. But as plans for rebuilding were drawn and as lineages were named, she was left behind by the pen of history. The pain didn't come from a visible wound, but from an unjust forgetting. No insults were hurled, no one said she didn't matter, but no one said she did. That silence cut deeper than any words. That night, as the wind stilled and the fire dwindled to glowing embers, she dreamed. In her dream, she stood in the desert, but the sand beneath her feet wasn't dry. It was fertile soil drenched in light. From her heart, sprouts emerged, each becoming a person, then a tribe, then a nation. She saw Cush riding a black lion, bearing the emblem of royalty. She saw Mizraim raising pyramids, reaching toward the heavens. She saw Canaan, with pained eyes, becoming a land of promise, where blood and holiness intertwined in every inch of soil. Then a voice spoke, not human nor the wind. It rose from the earth itself. You are not invisible to me. You are the beginning of nations. Your name is not written in paper, but it is etched in life. She awoke, cold sweat on her brow. Cush stirred in his sleep, his small hand instinctively grasping her finger. In that moment, she understood. The forgetting of man was not the forgetting of God. Her role wasn't in written records, but in the life she passed on. Divine justice doesn't always come with titles, but through steadfast presence, through courage that needs no proclamation. But understanding didn't erase the pain. The next morning, as Noah stood outside discussing land divisions and naming territories with his sons, she watched from a distance. Her eyes held no blame, but neither did they resign. They were the eyes of one who knew her purpose, yet waited for the chance to live it fully. How does one walk in a rebuilding world without being consumed by invisibility? How does a nameless woman keep the flame of life alive for generations yet to come? She had no complete answers, but she had something greater. Courage. Courage to keep nurturing the sons the world would name, but forget their source. Courage to seek no recognition, yet live as if it had already been granted from the highest place. Courage to turn silence into an echo of steadfast resolve. Night fell again. The fire was rekindled. She sat there alone, but not lonely. In her deep, steady eyes was an unshakable mountain. No one carved her name into the stone tablets of history, but she was carving herself into the sacred stream of justice through life, through faith, through a love that never faded for her sons and for the one who saw her from the dawn of creation. She may not be mentioned, but she was present. And in that silent presence, she was reshaping the future. The night cloaked the desert dunes in a mystic black velvet, with only the faint moonlight tracing gentle contours across the endless ripples of sand. No sound stirred, no wind blew, no fire crackled. There was only absolute stillness, a sacred stillness, as if the universe itself held its breath, watching something momentous unfold. She, the woman no one named, wife of Ham, mother of Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan, knelt among the dunes, hands clasped, eyes lifted to the boundless sky. Her heart no longer wrestled with questions of being forgotten. Gone were the protests, the pain of absent recognition. Tonight she came to offer. A prayer rose, not in spoken words, but in the language of her soul. No one heard, no one witnessed, except the one who had seen her from the beginning. In the silver moonlight, a soft glow like a breath descended around her. Not dazzling, not blazing, but enough to assure her she was never alone. Never. She bowed low. Lord, you who brought me through the great waters, who kept me in silence. Today I ask not for fame or remembrance. I seek only wisdom to raise my sons in your ways. As she rose, she was no longer the invisible woman. She had become a gatekeeper of an entire future. She returned to the tent where her 4 sons slept soundly, their small bodies curled like tiny seeds awaiting the first sunrise. She sat beside them, stroking their hair, whispering words her ancestors had once murmured in ancient caves. Words never written, but etched in the soul across generations. She taught them to listen to the wind, not to predict the weather, but to understand change. She taught them to watch their shadows on the sand, for shadows never lie. She taught them that strength lies not in domination, but in responsibility. Each night under the moonlight, she passed down lessons no school could teach. The wisdom to know when to be silent, the faith to walk when the path is unseen, and the mercy to lift those weaker than themselves. Cush, who would become the ancestor of Ethiopia, learned resilience from his mother's quiet strength. Mizraim, who would build Egypt, understood that power is a burden without justice. Put in Canaan, though their fates diverged, carried the seeds of a mother who needed no title, yet wielded influence greater than any crown. No one ordained her a prophet, no one hailed her as a teacher, but she did the work of a prophet, speaking of things yet to come, preparing for truths the world didn't yet grasp. She did the work of a master, sowing in hearts lessons that transcended their time. That was her courage. Not the courage of wielding a sword in battle, not the courage of facing tyranny barehanded, but the courage to believe in what she couldn't see, the courage to persist when no one applauded, the courage to teach when the world was silent, as if her words didn't matter. But she knew every lesson she taught, every gesture she passed on, was a cornerstone for nations to come. And as her sons grew, they carried not only the blood of their father, but the soul of a mother who quietly wrote their destiny with bare hands and unyielding faith. On the dunes under the moonlight, no one called her name, But in every just decision Cush made, in every grand structure Mizraim built, in every heroic or tragic page of Canaan's history, her mark endured. The world may continue to forget her name, but generations will live because of what she sowed. And in the eternal gaze of the Holy One, where every small act is weighed by love, she is remembered, not as a forgotten woman, but as a mother of nations. This is sacred courage. This is silent justice. This is faith in action. Dawn erupted over the desert like a sacred fire kindled from the heart of the earth. Light flooded every crevice, piercing through swirling layers of windswept sand, forming radiant golden waves. Alive, wild, untamed. Atop a high dune amidst the vastness of wind and light, a woman stood, small in stature, but unyielding. She was the wife of Ham, the mother of nations. Her sons were now grown. Cush, with his regal bearing and eyes deep as an abyss, stood like a pillar in the sandstorm. Mizraim, tall and composed, glowed with faith in order and majesty. Put and Canaan, though destined for divergent paths, were the embodiment of a bloodline that carried the memory of surviving the great flood. She gazed at them one by one, with wordless eyes. Pride mingled with worry. The wind howled through her fingers, tugging at her headscarf as if testing the very roots of the faith she had nurtured through long years. In that moment, a question sliced through her heart like a cold, sharp blade. Would her legacy be buried just as her name had been forgotten? She had given everything: her body, her youth, her dream, countless nights of prayer, every whispered lesson while the world slept. She had done what was right, not for reward, but for righteousness. Yet now, as her son stood ready to step into history with defined roles, she was but a faint shadow behind them. Would anyone remember who she was? The sand surged violently. A small whirlwind roared past the dune's crest like the earth's primal growl. Her sons stepped back, shielding their eyes. She stood firm, face lifted, eyes wide. Amid the wind's fury, a beam of light broke through the clouds, not like the usual dawn, but like a sacred divide between time and eternity. The light poured down upon her, not burning but warm beyond measure, like an invisible embrace cradling her soul. A voice resounded within her, not through her ears but through every cell, every beat of her steadfast heart. You have fulfilled your part, not your name, but the life you've passed in will endure forever. Tears welled, not from pain, but from being affirmed, seen, remembered, though no line of text etched her name on stone or parchment. She approached her sons. Standing before them, she raised her hands, placing them gently on each forehead in turn. No final instructions, no need for a testament. Everything that needed saying, she had already said in silent desert nights, in ancient stories she told, in the look in her eyes when they fell and when they rose. Then she stepped back, one step, then two. She retreated into the light, not to withdraw, but to let them move forward. It was her final sacrifice, not her body, but her identity. It didn't matter if no one knew who she was, as long as they lived true to what she had sown. She knew divine justice doesn't require fanfare. Redemption doesn't always come with a dramatic flourish, but through a purposeful fading to let what is worthy rise. The wind quieted. In the sky, the light lingered, like a divine seal upon the expanse, a confirmation from the Almighty. I see you, and I am pleased. She turned away, walking in a new direction. No more regret, no more doubt. She didn't need to be recorded in history books, for she was inscribed in the blood of nations, in the footsteps of those she raised with faith, wisdom, and courage. On the dune, ablaze with dawn, 4 sons stood tall, gazing toward the future. Behind them was their nameless mother, but never invisible. This is redemption. This is divine justice. This is the reward of a woman who chose to believe, even when the world chose silence. The sun sank over the Midian desert, leaving a radiant amber streak across the horizon. The sand glowed red-orange, and the air grew hushed, like a prayer closing a long day. But some stories never end. Some legacies don't fade when darkness falls. They simply enter their next chapter, quietly, steadfastly, eternally. The figure of that woman, Ham's wife, no longer walks the earth. Her name was never carved into genealogies, never sung in hymns, yet she planted seeds that have grown into forests. She departed without fanfare, but her legacy shines like a new dawn across Africa. From Kush, a mighty empire rose along the Nile, stretching through Ethiopia, where warriors and sages carried a regal spirit and sacred devotion. From Mizraim, ancient Egypt built pyramids that defy time, marking the wisdom and power of a civilization millennia ahead. And amid the monuments, stone carvings, and oral legends passed through generations, an invisible thread ties them all together. The nameless mother, the woman who dared to believe when no one saw, who quietly loved when no one looked. Her legacy didn't end with her sons. It burns on in the eyes of the Queen of Sheba, the woman who crossed deserts and seas to seek wisdom, bringing an entire kingdom to the feet of King Solomon's throne. In her was an unyielding spirit, profound intellect, and undeniable dignity, all rooted in a mother who once stood amid wind and sand, praying in silence and hoping without ceasing. It lives on in the first Ethiopians who embraced the gospel, when a royal official from their land unrolled the scroll of Isaiah and recognized the suffering servant who came for him. And it endures in communities today, in America, in Africa, where people of color still hold faith like a torch through the long night of history. God's grace doesn't follow maps of power. It isn't confined by race, fame, or royal blood. Grace seeks out the forgotten, the excluded, the overlooked. And in those very souls, he works wonders. That woman didn't need to be known to be great. She only needed to be faithful. And it was that quiet faithfulness that made her an indispensable part of redemption's story. This isn't just an ancient tale, it's a story for you. Living in the 21st century, perhaps wrestling with invisibility, old failures, closed doors, or the feeling of being left behind. But remember, no one is beyond the reach of grace. No role is small when lived in faith. No silence is meaningless if it flows from love and hope. You may not be named, but if you keep sowing love, keep teaching, keep praying, keep walking forward despite no reward, you are flowing in the same current as that mother. You are continuing a story written by God's own hand. And if today you need a reminder that your life matters, that the faith you cling to isn't in vain, this is that reminder. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are chosen. Share this story with someone who needs a reason to keep going. Subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring the forgotten women of the Bible, those whom grace chose to leave an eternal mark. And remember, divine justice always begins in the smallest places, and the greatest light often rises from the quietest souls.